Political repression, gender-based violence, lack of access to essential services, and discrimination are among the primary challenges facing the region.
And to present his paper.
The desperate nature of politics partly accounts for the scourge of conflicts in the region. So beyond the influence, beyond the interest of the actors that are without, the ones that I referred to earlier, there are always contestations, there are always conflicts between the countries. We don't have that in West Africa. I think we're blessed not to have countries sponsoring conflicts, in neighboring countries. There is a collective security approach. There is a fraternity that exists between West African states. You don't have that so much in the Horn of Africa. As I put it somewhere, where I presented a paper recently, everyone is in everybody's business in the Horn of Africa. Whether you're referring to Eritrea versus Ethiopia over Badme, or you're referring to even the problem over the River Nile, the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam between Ethiopia and Sudan, and by extension, Egypt. Whether you're referring to the border disputes over offshore gas and oil between Kenya and Somalia, everyone is involved in everyone's business. Fourthly, there is no meaningful collective security approach in the Horn of Africa. There is IGAD, the Intergovernmental Authority on Development. Yes, it has been functional over the years for a period. But if you compare to ECOWAS, if you compare to the ECOWAS sub-region, where you have an effective and robust peace and security mechanism for the sub-region, it is not as operational in the Horn of Africa. So it therefore makes it difficult for heads of states, for decision makers to speak to each other, to try and devise means of resolving conflicts, among themselves. That sort of, fraternity, that sort of collective security interest doesn't exist in those parts. So I would go to, as I begin to try to conclude, just to highlight a few things, key lessons for West Africa. So having said all of this about the Horn of Africa, are there key lessons that we must draw, or that the Parliament and stakeholders like ourselves, citizens of the sub-region, can draw from the Horn of Africa? I think there are a number of them. I'll highlight just a few. In terms of proximity, as I mentioned earlier, West Africa is not that far away from the Horn of Africa. We are not completely immune from insecurity coming from those parts. Again, I refer to Libya. We remember what happened when Gaddafi, was toppled, and then the insecurity that ensued as a result of that. There are also filial ties that a lot of people are not aware of. In Sudan today, there are 2 million plus Nigerians, Sudanese of Nigerian descent living in Sudan. We have cousins in Sudan. And of course, if anything affects them in that so seemingly far-flung place, it has direct impact on parts of West Africa as well. We're talking about the illicit flow of small arms and light weapons. We're talking about the increasing scourge of mercenary outfits from different parts of the continent. Again, if there is instability in the sub-region, in West Africa, you can have an influx of mercenaries from those parts to West Africa. Hopefully not, pray not. The second point is that obviously there is an increasing failure of multilateral interventions globally. A lot has been said about ECOWAS and the role that it's played or not played on the situation in Niger, on the situation in Mali, as well as Burkina Faso. I just want to posit here that this is not exclusive to West Africa. The challenge of having a multilateral approach to dealing with these issues is global. You find the challenges of finding consensus to deal with some of the conflict issues, even at the UN level. The Security Council, as we know today, is divided. Therefore, it becomes even difficult to discuss, to bring those matters to the table, not to talk of devising solutions. So multilateralism is failing. What do we need to do? How do we ensure that all these efforts that worked in yesteryears, in intervening in Liberia, in Sierra Leone, in Cote d'Ivoire, in Guinea, recently in the Gambia. How do we ensure that West Africa is able to step up to, live to its responsibilities in dealing with that? ECOWAS specifically, food for thought for esteemed members. I wanted to also highlight that the utility of regional hegemons cannot be overstated. Regional hegemons, whether we like it or not, play a role. The likes of Nigeria, historically in West Africa, if you cast your minds back to 2002, 2003, up to 2007, I refer to those years as the golden era of multilateral diplomacy for the African Union and the other entities. You remember President Obasanjo for Nigeria. You remember President Abdoulaye Wade for Senegal. You remember President Bouteflika for Algeria, President Thabo Mbeki for South Africa. You remember President Meles Zenawi for Ethiopia. These were regional hegemons who actually stood up to defend and to propagate, effective developmental solutions, conflict resolution efforts, etc., on behalf of their sub-regions. Today, if you look across the continent, you don't have that, unfortunately. There is a dearth, a shortage of leadership across the continent, unfortunately. So again, utility of regional hegemons cannot be overstated. Second to the last point, it has more or less become a mantra, but it's a fact. Good governance, social justice remain the effective bulwark for peace and stability. Where there is social injustice, where human rights and the rule of law are not respected, where good governance or democratic ideals are not adhered to, you find instability. You find instability. So we can't sing that song enough to say that these are effective structural conflict prevention, efforts that need to be in place. Utilizing local peace infrastructure. The norm is to look at these situations and to look up to the likes of ECOWAS and the UN, etc. But the point is, there have been very effective community level, sub-national level, grassroots-based interventions that are actually so critical to preventing conflicts across the sub-region, across West Africa. Some of them are informal, some of them actually derive from initiatives from the likes of our traditional authorities, our religious leaders at the community level, etc. They are so effective, and we need to amplify that. We cannot afford to rely on entities like ECOWAS and the African Union and the UN to deal with all of these conflicts on their own.
So what we have done, we still need to do more, because we need to do more so that people can feel, especially the people in the rural areas, they can feel the impact of government. They can feel that they have the right to live like others, the way we are living. In the pursuit of human rights advancement in Africa, the International Human Rights Commission is actively involved in advocating for human rights across Africa, with a focus on various key issues. Some of the highlights of IHRC advocates in Nigeria, West Africa include in Nigeria, advocacy for human rights education in school system across Africa. That's what we are doing. Even in Abuja, we have some people we are giving scholarship. We have a lot of people we have empowered to see how they can succeed like others. Protection of vulnerable population, which led to IHRC forming a partnership in a signed memorandum of understanding with the National Agency for the Prohibition of Trafficking in Persons, NAPTIP, and a working cooperation with National Institute for Peace and Conflict Resolution, Federal Road Safety Corporation, Federal Ministry of Justice. There's a book I wrote recently, last year. I will present that book to Honorable Speaker. Okay, International Law and Comparative Department and the Nigerian Police in an effort to strengthen dialogue. IHRC, in a bid to promote democracy and good governance, has established cooperation with Electoral Commission in some West African countries like Nigeria, Ghana, Gabon, VED, and Cote d'Ivoire, monitoring elections and ensuring citizens' involvement in election as a civic right. Initiation and execution of educational support projects. Promoting access to justice. IHRC work to promote access to justice for all individuals in Africa. Advocating for fair and impartial legal system that uphold human rights and the rule of law. I was opportune to visit, to be in in some police cell in Nigeria, and correctional centers. I know how many people we have been able to free. You see somebody that is kept for long just because of 50,000 naira. You start asking what is going on. I know somebody that will say, please let him go because of 9,000 naira. So we have a lot to do. In fact, we need to visit these people to see what they are passing through. You see somebody that has been given a bail, he cannot fulfill the bail condition, and nobody is there to speak for the person. A lot needs to be done. And that is why I want to draw your attention today to see how you can help us in Africa. Let there be a framework that can be able to make the government obey certain rules and regulations. Make the government see the people, not only when they need election, not only during election that will become friends. After election, will become enemies. You can't even wave, say, if you wave, you're in trouble. Promoting access to justice. By fostering this partnership, IHIC aim to foster human rights mechanism, enhance accountability, and uphold international human rights standards in Africa. In conclusion, our discussion on the pressing human rights situation in Africa, it is imperative we reflect on our current status as developing nations, to uphold our culture, values, and heritage, and to address the widespread hunger and malnutrition within our borders. The cycle of oppression instigated by authoritarian leaders, inadequate policies, unfunded education and healthcare system poses a risk to the future of Africa. Hence, the foundation of the actualization of our basic human rights as Africans anchors now on our readiness to see the Africa in us, judge our journey thus far, and act accordingly. Therefore, it is necessary that immediate action is taken and cooperation is fostered on both the national and regional stages. As representative of ECOWAS Parliament, we must champion the defense and advancement of human rights within our borders, likewise throughout the wider region, through joint effort and steadfast commitment to integrating human rights considerations in our policies. Please take note, to integrate human rights considerations in our policies and initiative as enshrined in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, we can pave the way for a future that is characterized by fairness and equity for every individual in Africa. Let us also remember that what we do today, we do for the generation.
To address these challenges, members of ECOWAS Parliament propose solutions to include promoting gender equality, access to justice, regional and intergovernmental cooperation.
Starting with both of them, I think they can share the same questions. One is about the human rights and also the conflict in the sub-region. I know before they're coming, with their laws and everything, they gave us a constitution to say you have to work this way. They use the word democracy and give it to us. All these three are given to us, and now it is human rights being given to us. Were there anything like a sort of sitting together, consulting you to ask you as African what is best for you when it comes to democracy, what is best for you when it comes to your constitution? You look at the key challenges when it comes to democracy, about politics, gender-based violence, lack of access to essential services, terrorism and insecurity. All these things are issues that are currently happening in Africa. But can we go way back to ask our question whether it was happening? Whether it was happening, how was it happening? Was it happening in this way? That's a question. What triggered it to happen in this way? I think we always borrow. Let's stop borrowing and have our own thing. Our parents were married with 4 wives. There were never something like gender-based violence. They were disciplined women. Why is it happening now? Because we are borrowing. Right to the child, right for the wife, right for the husband. All these rights coming together. Even your own child, you cannot control your own child in your house. You call your father, you are lying. Mom, it's not true. Father, it's not true. We are boring, it's not part of our culture. They discipline you. They tell you what to do. In our own Gambia, there were times when they take you in the bush for a month to train you what? Discipline. They circumcise you and train you discipline. How do you sit before you eat? How do you talk to elders? If your mother looks at you right in your eyes, you know what she is saying. Now it's human rights. Your mothers we have to stop to talk to you. Your father also the same thing. Till when? As Africans, it's not part of our culture. Even when it comes to religion, also it's not part of our religion. You have a big role to play. And this can only be done when we see each other as Africans and prepare something that belongs to us. We are not stupid. We have intelligent people in this continent who can change the narrative. When it comes to leadership, Africans have very good people who have the heart for Africa. But they will start working. They will start doing changes. Somebody else will be prepared to go and get him down. Where are the lives of Thomas Sankara? Where are the lives of Kwame Nkrumah? They are Africans. What are they doing? Trying to change Africa. Libya, Gaddafi. Where is the AU today? What was Gaddafi doing? To unite Africa so that we can be independent than dependent. But we'll never achieve our dreams and goals because we have been controlled with these words, human rights. When you come to conflict, what destroyed Libya? It was destroyed by who? The West. Then where is the human rights? Were they called to go and answer to Hague? They were never called. But an African will do it next minute. The ICC will come and call you and say, come and answer to us. Honorable Speaker, I think it is high time we believe in ourselves and change the narrative. Thank you.
And as some of my colleagues have expressed, we were looking for more data on the situation of human rights in our countries, because I think it's important in this kind of meeting for us to know the countries that can be called champions of respecting human rights and those which need to improve their performance, because for legislators that's very important for us to draw attention and then advocate so that the issue could be better treated in our countries, because it's a fundamental question which affects the welfare of our countries. Still in the report, I've noticed that you have partnership with some countries, that is observing election observance. I think you have to broaden that to all the countries to be more effective, because we are connected one way or the other. I congratulate ECOWAS for their, let's say, progress in promoting human rights with strengthening the prerogative, let's say, enhancement of the powers of the Court of Justice, and they can then be applied to the region. I think that it needs to be hailed, but I want to call the attention of the authority of heads of state so that the decisions of the tribunal should be more, let's say, respected, because so that the heads of state should submit to the decisions of the court. Let me also call on the ECOWAS that justice should be more independent in our states, so that justice in our states should not be at the service of the leaders, but it should be at the level and be accessible to everyone. And it should not be accessible to a particular category of people. And then the legislation should be put in place to protect the victims and then the witnesses, and then to ensure those who don't have, let's say, ways and means can appeal to justice for the situation to be corrected. So I think you have to encourage our states so that they can protect more human rights in our states or countries. I was very happy to see in the report that there is no reference to the political rights only. Normally, when you say human rights, you talk more about, let's say, demonstrations. But then you have taken care of other rights which don't need going down on the street. For example, the right to education, to health, access to infrastructure, the utility services, etc. How many states invest more in education? How many states in access to quality health care and the improvement of utilities and so on? If you look at the budgets within the states, there is less, let's say, attribution to these particular, let's say, items. I think that should draw attention and should be taken into account. Mr. Speaker, let me conclude with, let's say, gender-based violence. Well, Honorable Speaker, they invoke many violences which are a reality in our states, aggression, attacks, and then rapes. Every day, rapes are being recorded on, and let's say, young girls, and then nothing happens. That is to be reported. This state should wake up. When you, let's say, rape, let's say, the small girls, or sexual harassment, whether in our works, or those who take advantage, these should be reported because they are violations of human rights. And also, women, let's say the men who beat their women, if the woman complains about the husband, well, what happens? She is denounced and rejected. So they support the men to say that she should dress decently, and this doesn't deserve, let's say, any accusation. So early marriage, FGM, these are practices which affect the empowerment of women. They have to be denounced in our states, and heads of state should get involved and play a better role so that women's rights are respected. Well, empowerment of women is not a reality within their parliaments. If you look at the decision-making agencies, the bodies, well, even here, how many women to men? And in our parliaments and our delegations, these are things that ECOWAS should get involved in. Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker.
And spoken very well, even though there are areas where details and specifics would have helped us a little. My concerns are very few, but I think they would help me have a better understanding of the concepts that you've brought to bear. Yes, there have been issues of human rights challenges, human rights abuses, and they are not new. They're not things that just started today. So in your own understanding, both of you, who should be held more complicit? And I will give you the framework. Who should be held more complicit? Is it those who plundered us, or those who helped them to plunder us? Get back to the transatlantic slave trade. We were plundered. The best of the best were taken away. And in the process, they engineered conflicts between brothers, where brothers could kill each other to take slaves for them. They have not ended at that point. In today, West Africa, every mineral that we have lacked the capacity, or we have refused to develop, or they have refused to assist us develop the capacity to add value. From gold to uranium to diamond to even the simplest, the crude oil, we are not adding value. So who should be held more complicit? Those who plunder us, or those amongst us who support and aid them to plunder us? That's my first concern. The second concern I have is,
across board, capitalism tells you get the maximum that you can get from anybody and pay him the least that you can, where possible. And in that process, rights are denied. Countries don't pay wages that can be classified as living wages, driven by the desire to maximize profits, capitalism. So, to what extent has capitalism, as a concept, when implemented, aided the desire, the drive for human rights, or its denial? To what extent has that concept aided or on both sides? Then the second speaker was talking about authoritarian governance and democratic governance. Please, is there a difference between authoritarian human rights abuse and democratic human rights abuse? Is there a difference? No, I want to know. I'm a student. I want to understand whether there is a difference. No, I'm talking to them. You could also add. I am not excusing any of our leaders. I'm not. Because most leaders are always blind to the things that are happening down the deck. And when you attempt to speak, Dr. Kabiru and the speaker, you know what happens. I think one happened to your very good friend. I won't mention his name. When you tend to speak the truth, there is conspiracy of silence. Let it not be like the Titanic, like I said the other day. Then, finally, sir, how are you being sponsored? Are you being sponsored by the same group who denied the world humanity? Are you not being sponsored by the same set of people who are encouraging the abuse of humanity and its rights? How are you being sponsored to get to this level? And I understand that there has been a global concern on the right to food. There's a global concern on the right to food because food security is becoming a huge challenge. In some cases and in some quarters, it can be admitted that the right to food is classified today as a human right. If that is correct, is there any country that is free of this abuse? And how justiciable will that right be? Or has it been tried? Thank you.
I want to believe they share a lot in common, if not all. All are connected matters or related matters. The human rights situation across West Africa, as highlighted in the presentations, is a way of trying to reflect our memories on the current happenings and realities. By the way, social political instability and conflicts in the Horn of Africa, lessons for West Africa. Wherever we have these sort of conflicts and instability, that means there are gross human rights violations. Honorable Speaker, if we are reminded and we are told on the other hand that we should be learning, my belief and feeling is we had our lessons and we had learned our lessons. Unless we forget our lessons, what are we to learn? It was on the basis of our lessons after the independence that confronted the sub-region West Africa. ECOWAS was established. Kwame Nkrumah did say, if we have our political independence without the economic independence, our independence would be meaningless. It was on this drive that this bloc had a thought to gain our economic independence and establish ECOWAS, to integrate the sub-region so that we gain our economic independence and we get the true meanings of independence. Along the way, we had setbacks. We had civil wars, military takeovers, and also rebellions across the sub-region. Where we have such gross human rights violations are always the case. ECOWAS did very well. At a point, almost all the countries, we succeeded in getting democracy and rule of law. As we go, we are now beginning to get the threat and fear of the emergence of the military takeovers that is undermining the achievement and progress that ECOWAS has achieved. If today we are told to learn from other places things that are happening, I am saying we already had that in West Africa, and we learned from that within West Africa.
Honorable Speaker, colleague MPs, and dear presenters, first of all, let me underscore the importance of the two themes and congratulate the presenters for their presentations on these two important themes that are making it possible for us MPs to discuss and debate the issues. I will concentrate my intervention on human rights. There are several factors that lead to violation of human rights. It starts off by the complexity of the human being himself, that is a human mind. Very often, let's say, selfishness, individualism. Many people don't think about the collective group. First of all, they themselves, they forget about the group. There are issues linked to tribal groupings, cultural groupings, or differences. Family based on the family, education based on the family group, issues linked to politics, a country where you don't have freedom of thought or thinking, there is no freedom of ideas or freedom of expression. How will you comply with human rights or observe human rights? There is the justices are supposed to be independent, where those courts depend on the political authority, so they are not independent, and then they find it difficult to apply human rights. In a country where there is no democracy, we have dictatorship, there's difficulty in applying human rights. In a country where the minimum wage is around $30 to $40 a month, is the first violation of human rights. How can someone survive on $30 a month? In a country where, as I've mentioned, people are extremely poor, and there is a group of people who are extremely rich, in contrast, that is violation of human rights. In a country in which you have a high level of corruption, and corruption that the money that you spend on corruption that could have been spent on health, education, accommodation or housing, that's the first violation of human rights. So when an African doesn't have access to education, the African countries cannot accommodate human needs. The most important thing is that all our children should have free education up to, let's say, university level, and the state should have the obligation to train all children or educate all children, because it's only an educated population that has been to school that will be in a position to defend themselves and defend their rights. And for as long as we have, let's say, illiteracy, children are out of school, and our countries don't privilege or don't reserve 30% of their budget to education, violation of human rights will never stop. Now, in terms of health, many years ago, WHO has been advising our countries to apply at least 15% of their respective budgets to health. Which of the countries in the ECOWAS, for example, is really devoting 15% to health of their budget, or 30% to education? If there were any, you can correct me. So these are problems that we have to resolve. And we, the political class, we have a huge responsibilities, because the political class is elected to serve the people and not to live off the people. So to conclude, these issues are internal. We have to resolve them, but there are external factors. Sometimes the countries, some developed countries, because of their economic interest in Africa, prefer to stimulate conflicts and sow division among us. So we have to be intelligent enough to be able to avoid this and resolve our issues, and realize that economic interest generate violation of human rights. So I have been very clear. Thank you very much.
Mr. Speaker, I'm delighted to say that I am in this Parliament in view of the interest that we have from the two brilliant guest speakers. I'd like to congratulate them, and I have to tell them already that I'm going to be provocative because I want us to get to a logical conclusion. First of all, after commending you, and I'm happy that we are here to discuss this very important subject matter. I'd like you to complete one. Well, the first one said is a doctor. We want to know what kind of doctorate you have. And the second person would also share in the same question I'm going to ask. In your own view, what can the ECOWAS Parliament do with organizations just like yours really working on the field? We should do away with theories. We should stop the talk shop. All what you have said, we know all about this in our political parties and in our countries. So now let's go for action. You are coming at a time whereby our community, ECOWAS, is facing difficulties. The perception coming from outside and the perception of even of our own citizens is not really encouraging. And God knows that each one of us here in our in our secret analysis, in our own solitary points, we know some of the criticism made concerning ECOWAS. We know in some countries there is no democracy, in some parliaments there are even no debate. That is why these people come from different places and parties. When people speak, it becomes riotous. Anyway, what I want to say, the second presenter, you are right to tell us about the crisis in the Horn of Africa can come and worsen the situation for us in the sub-region. Sudan, for instance, after what happened in Libya, and Nigeria and other countries that are not far away, Chad, Cameroon, even Niger, this should be, the threat is there for these countries. So what you said is very pertinent. We need to get inspired about what is happening there so that we will know how to react. But in the meantime, what can organizations like yours have done in terms of humanitarian approach, in terms of handling the real issues, either by going through civil society organization or through members of parliament, for countries like Guinea, for instance, countries like Senegal, countries like Niger, countries such as Burkina Faso? These countries, for instance, are facing issues in terms of human rights. Here again, it is good to say in these countries things are happening, but that is what the most important issue is. Who is funding your activities? I'm asking this question. You talked about Libya. You talked about the various conflicts in the world. These conflicts, most often, these are conflicts that are created by the West and colonials, colonial master. It could even be Arabs. Even in the current crisis we have here in ECOWAS, even for the creation of EAS, Morocco has his hand there because Morocco wanted to enter into ECOWAS, and we said no. They created problems for us. The first country that left was Mauritania. We were talking about Russia, China. We are behaving as if it's just issues of human rights, of access to knowledge, access to technology. No, that's not the case. Let's come to reality. Today, we have the duty and obligation to stop pointing at the West. We should look inwards. We should call ourselves into question so that we can handle our questions inwardly. We have intelligent people, we have experts, we have scientists, researchers, we have decision makers who want to do the work. Why are we not looking inwards? And to do this, I want to be provocative in ECOWAS. You've talked about heads of state that have done a lot for Africa. You have talked about President of Nigeria, Obasanjo, I believe. You talked about Abdoulaye Wade. God knows that there are people who are even better than them today in Africa. But the problem we're having is the problem of underdeveloped countries with the issue of term limits. In my country, Senegal, when we developed the PSA, which is the emergent Senegal plan, and we said this is for 50 years. So how can, in 5 years, or 10 years, how can you transform a complete generation through just 10 years? Let's think of term limits. We need to change that. The Arab countries, they've been developed not with democracies, with stability, but they developed in terms of stability in governance.
Others call for urgent intervention on terrorism and marginalization that have a direct negative effect on human rights in the region.
I'm opening the floor for a general debate. To come back the issue raised by our colleague Villan, he is no longer in the room, unfortunately, and I find that this it's an issue on which we have to invite the intellectual class and MPs like us we are to think about the question of limitation of mandates. Let's say 2 mandates for each head of state. Honorable Speaker, the objective of the policy or politics or governance, what is the goal? Honorable Speaker, about the major goal of governance is to transform conditions, improve conditions of citizens. And so, Honorable Speaker, it's true that I support our colleague Villan to say that in 8 years, 10 years, it's very difficult to change the conditions, and it will be difficult to transform the conditions of our people. Now let me come back to the example of Côte d'Ivoire. It's a foretaste of tomorrow's discussions. Honorable Speaker, in 2011, when President Ouattara ascended to power, GDP was 12 trillion, but in 2023, it's 48 billion. Now, the national budget, 2011, when President Ouattara assumed power, was 3 billion. 3 billion, and today is 13 billion. 2011 again, the GDP, that is a debt stroke GDP, was 69% in 2011. Today, it stands at 52.8%, is it? In the area of education, when President Ouattara assumed power in 2011, we had 215, let's say, colleges. Today, there are 797. 797. That's colleges. Now, in terms of electrification, coverage in 2011 was 33% coverage of the country. Today, 2023 is 46%, 86%, sorry. Now, in terms of highways and roads, we had well, just to give you a foretaste of tomorrow. In terms of highways, there's 6,500 kilometers asphalted. Today is 8,563 kilometers. So, giving you these facts, and we are talking about 2 mandates, which is the main criterion for a democracy. This I will handle tomorrow. So the first presenter tackled the issue of human rights, which is a very broad field or area, and which, what can we do to improve the conditions, I would say, of our populations in the region. Honorable Speaker, during the presentation of the report, I think it was Ghana country report, they talked about overpopulation of prisons. It's a very important issue, and for us as MPs, we have to embrace this issue because it's a sort of cross-cutting problem and common denominator to all our countries, and it's a problem which I think we have to work on it if the Parliament really wants ECOWAS to become an ECOWAS of peoples.
So they're not just only sending to us for our audience, they are also long-standing partners of this Assembly. Thank you very much. And I'll give the floor to Right Honorable Kadi Veronica Sisi.
But basically, I want to focus my intervention to the human rights presenter and the questions that he asked. What are we doing to help Africa to get off from these sufferings? Now we have so many organizations. We have AU. And ECOWAS is just part of Africa, West Africa. The AU is the African Union. Where is the union in this? Mr. Speaker, honorable members, the presenter talked about food security, job, but my question is, how are we going to tackle this? The question goes back to you, or the answer. We should be in this together. We should work together as a team. I mean, ECOWAS, African Union, and the very human rights. But I'm afraid, this same human rights, the commission or whatever, is the same human rights that has made some of these problems be escalated. If you hear from my colleagues, in those days, when we were scholars, we used to get scared of our teachers. If you dare to do anything wrong, the teacher will lay you there and give you some few lashes. If you have done wrong, if a child does wrong outside, some other parents will give you lashes, don't do it again. But this time, with the laws in the human rights, has deviated. This is the reason why we have so many dropouts, so many things that is happening, kush, smoking, marijuana, because nobody is in control. If you ask anybody, say, leave me, it's human rights, that's my right. These are some of the things. So we have to revisit some of our laws that are in these human rights to help what you have presented. Indeed, I enjoyed your presentation because you presented the thing with vigor, that you have passion for it. But these are the problems that we have envisaged, even with the mothers, as you heard again from my colleagues. You can no longer shout on your child. In those days, if you look your parents or your parent look you right on your eye, you should know what she means. But this time, it doesn't happen. Because they will start to ask you, Mommy, why are you looking at me like that? And you can see a teacher with a broken shoe or bended shoe going to teach. We respect them, but it's no longer there. The reverse. You use you will be teaching, they will be using their telephones. If you ask them, they say, human right, that's my right. You cannot even correct them. This is a problem that we have envisaged. So, Mr. Speaker, honorable members, we have gone to the schools. And that is what is happening in the schools. You no longer have, like in those days, you have standard 1 in my country, standard 1, standard 2, 3, and 4. You cannot challenge them. But now, the worst, except they have to use telephones. You spell N-I-G-H-T, they will just cut it off N-I-T. You know, these are some of the things. We should revisit. Let us go back to our books and see how we can do. These are some of the things that we should be seen doing. And the question that you ask, how are we doing? And you go to the prison again, they say human rights. Although some people are there innocently, but some are there that have done the thing. When they want to deal with them, they will say it's human rights. And that is why Sierra Leone has just removed the death penalty. And that is why problems are coming up again. Because when there was death penalty, they say, kill the dog while the dog is watching. It will not repeat itself again. But now it doesn't happen. So you see too much everywhere, shooting, firing, and everything. There's no control. Because they say human rights. So we have to visit some of these laws. And let us come down to agriculture. Our lands in Africa, so fertile. So fertile, 6 months rain, 6 months dries. Some people in the West, they come to Africa and get the soil to go and give us whatever fruits. They come to our land. We have so many products here in our countries. And I heard from my colleagues, if you go down to some of our countries, we have so many minerals. Like in Sierra Leone, let me talk, charity begins at home. We have gold, we have diamond, bauxite, rutile, you name it. But are we benefiting? We are not. They come, the whites, they come and get this of our products. No human rights is looking at them. They take our products, they go to their countries and get the telephones, they will come and buy. They come here and take our soil, they go and produce rice, they will buy. At the end of the day, we start to have hypertension, low hypertension, hepatitis, or whatever. We don't even know what they are putting on it. But we have fertile land. Why can't we make use of our land? You see these young boys going up and down, you bobo they are in Creole in my country. Why can't you go and work? Go to agriculture. Go and do something. But if you start to say, hey, go and do work or go and do this, human right. Human right, we have to come together to eradicate if really we want to benefit this country.
Before the concept of human rights was introduced to us, our forefathers, our traditional settings, had the basis form of human rights. So a married man was forbidden from beating his wife. I mean, if he does so, he was reported to the chief palace or any form of court for it to be addressed. Now, with the advent of human rights concepts, now anybody who talks about human rights, then we will quickly refer to the abuses, the abuse of human rights. But as has been explained by a lot of my colleagues, you must have the right before it is abused. For instance, right of education. If you go to most, and I'm happy you refer to rural communities. If you go to some communities in Africa, children have to walk sometimes 3 kilometers to access primary school. A lot of communities, even ordinary cheap compound, to cater for their basic health needs, they lack it. Some of them have not even seen electricity throughout their life. Water to drink, they share water together with, excuse me to use the word, animals. So we need to strategically address these problems before we can talk about human rights and its abuses. Now, these same white people, if you go to Ghana, for instance, it is in our Labor Act law that you cannot employ somebody as a casual worker for 6 months continuously. After 6 months, you have to regularize the person's employment. Do you know what they are doing now? They employ you 5.5 months, you are laid off, and then the following month, they re-engage you, just to avoid that clause. We know that these foreigners who are doing businesses on our countries, they pay our people below even the minimum wage that has been set by our own government. And we look on for our people to be abused. Then you wake up and say that there is child abuse. There is child labor. When in my rural community, I have to support my mother or my father to work on his or her cocoa farm to be able to get resources to go to school. The white man came and told me that helping my father to work on his cocoa farm so that I can get my school fees is a child abuse or child labor. Meanwhile, if I don't support my mother or my father to work on his cocoa farm, I won't get my school fees when school is open the following term or semester. So I think that we should put it in proper perspective. Don't let us follow these white men who don't even respect us. Those are our friends who have traveled to US and the European countries. They discriminate them because of their color. Then they come to West Africa or Africa and tell us that, so please, you are experts in the field. I wanted to hear from you pragmatic steps that you are taking to ensure that when we talk about human rights in West Africa, we're putting it in a cultural perspective to suit our interests, not in the interest of the white man. Mr. Speaker, if I want to conclude, I want to talk about, look, they ask that you have to constitute legal institutions, democratic institutions. So in Ghana we have human rights institution, which is supposed to be responsible for all human rights abuses in the country. But what happens? They deprive them of resources. So we have the institution all right. The human beings are sitting there, not even vehicles to go around. They deprive them resources so that they can work. We have NCC in Ghana. Their duty is to go and educate the populace on their civil rights. But what is the resources to do that? Finally, they said that we should have legal aid. They create legal aid to support the needy, to fight justice. Why do we find legal aid? They are all centered in Accra. If you go to my constituency, you cannot enjoy the services of legal aid. So what are we doing to ourselves? On paper, we are writing theories, putting them on paper, but at a practical level, nothing, virtually nothing is going on to support. So please, I also wanted to hear something about education. The right that we are talking about. How many people are even aware of their rights? To talk about they defending it. Or when they abuse it, they're able to know that this is my right, which has been abused by ABC. What are you doing with regard to that? Because we need to educate our people to know their rights. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Sister mentioned that even if she gets home, her children know when to say welcome. The children know when to hug her. If you sit down and you think that the child will go and report you because they are telling children that if your mother or father does something to you, go and report to the police. Excuse me for using this our language. It will hear you. Because nobody will come and correct that child for you. And my brother from Liberia mentioned his school and what he does. You cannot come to my home or you cannot be in my house. I couldn't have birthed you. And then you tell me that you have right more than I who brought you to the world. When I had the right to remove you and throw you in the gutter, I didn't throw you. Mr. Speaker, look, it is a shame. It is a shame that, Mr. Speaker, you are already telling me to wind up when I'm now starting. Mr. Speaker, LGBTQ plus. You don't even know how many pluses are there. The colors you have never dreamed of is what they have. You don't know where it is coming from. A country says that, look, we are not ready, we won't take this, we cannot have this. Then they are told that if you will not take it, we will not support you, we will not give you money, we will not do what? For God's sake, how is this world going to end if we so agree with LGBTQ++? Because I've never seen a man and a man giving birth to children. Neither have I seen a woman and a woman giving birth to children. And this is what they are inculcating into the minds of our children. Then we sit here and we say ECOWAS, we say rights. we are facing the joke of ourselves. I can assure you. Mr. Speaker, child abuse, I don't want to even mention, when they are teaching their children music, if you may call it, or songs or whatnot, they couch it and say talented kids. Good. We have seen the children jumping and dancing and we are happy. You, an African, take your child for fishing. They will arrest you on the high seas or in the river and say child abuse. We had an issue where a teacher on a Sunday went with his child because there was nobody at home. He was going for fishing, went with the child, a teacher, a professional teacher. This teacher was arrested with the child taken away, separated from him, and that he had no right. What are we doing for God's sake? Look, we are talking about terrorism. We have said this in the last parliament. We spoke about it. We spoke about terrorism. If you look at some of the videos, and then at the end of the day, you see the kinds of weapons that people have in some of the deep necks of our forests, you will ask yourself, where did they get those weapons from? Sometimes you see them even still in their containers. Did their weapons fly? Did they melt and get into that place? Who brought them in? How did they come in? How do those people live? It is in our blood. It is within us. If we want, we should better change for our own betterment and ensure that we go back.
I'm very happy that we've been able to look at gender-based violence as a human rights. So the solution or the proposal for solution that is in the document may not satisfy gender-based violence. We have to do it in such a way that the victims of this violence should be encouraged, first of all, to report, to be protected, and to be accompanied, and then go to justice if there's a possibility, that you can complain and that people should accompany them because no one knows all their rights. So even when you are aware, you have said that justice is for the rich. So those who are victims don't have the ways and means to be able to bear the costs of justice. So this is a contribution I'm making to the proposals for solution that you have put down in the document. Now going to Tigray. This had consequences, very sad. Thousands died, millions were displaced. So I just want to understand, as an NGO that are working in the Horn of Africa, do you have a mechanism to withdraw the Prime Minister of Ethiopia? That is the Nobel Prize that he was given, because he was awarded the Nobel Prize, and at that time he was at war. So that is a contrast with the facts on the ground. So that means that you have a prize, you are killing your own populations. The West that is encouraging you, are they not inciting you to continue with that war? So you as an NGO, do you have a mechanism so that this kind of, let's say, premium can be withdrawn from those who are awardees?